Now the Great Lakes Week is over. What kind of action can we expect in the year to come? Joining me now is Dr. Patrick Doran from the Nature Conservancy in Michigan and Gary Wilson, a commentator for the Great Lakes Echo from Chicago. Gentlemen, how are you?
Great.
Rounding third base.
Yes.
Yes, I know we have wrapped up the week. So now it's time to sit back and take a look at everything that we've seen this week, talking about science and plans for the future, and say, what have we learned from this and what are we going to take away? I'm going to start with you, Patrick.
I just got to go to lunch and listen to Jerry Dennis speak. Jerry Dennis, author, Living Great Lakes, and I think his new book is The Windward Shore. And sometimes I like to sit and reflect and kind of, what do you hear people saying? What are the trends you say? Or, you can talk to people and say, what's in their checkbook? That's where they really spend their money. You look at their checkbook. And he told the story about how 10 years ago he would go to college campuses or high schools and talk to students, and there'd be 20 people to show up. Now, and they really would be like, I don't know what, Great Lakes, huh? But now he's going, and there's 100, 200, in some cases 600 people showing up, and they know about the Great Lakes. And they're asking questions. They're bringing questions with them about the Great Lakes. So to me, there's just that trend that the Great Lakes, it's right here in front of us. It is on the tips of our tongues. We know about it. And then I look 10 years in the future, all those people are going to be in jobs that depend upon it or jobs helping on the health of the Great Lakes. So that is exciting.
Why do you think that is, Gary? That more people, the awareness of some of the issues that Great Lakes have, and that what we're doing in our everyday lives can impact in some way, shape, or form the watershed and where we are?
Well, two things. One of it is the work of conferences like this, and even before the two Great Lakes Weeks, all the groups had their own conferences, and the Great Lakes have really been in the media for about the last 7 or 8 years now. It used to be they struggled to get, 2 paragraphs on page 87. And now the media is pretty much covering the Great Lakes. Even the New York Times has fairly regular coverage. It's not going to be in depth, but it's there. The other issue is the Asian carp. I know we're all getting tired of talking about Asian carp, but people are starting to read the Asian carp stories all the time, and that gets them occasionally to looking at other things and paying attention to the Great Lakes. So,
and those things, I think people are recognizing that it's not just a regional issue.
Right.
The Chicago area waterway system is things go out and things come in, right? So things go out and they get to the Midwest, they get to California, they get to Nevada. So I think people say, it's just not a regional issue, the water issue, it's not a regional thing.
The Sacramento Bee regularly picks up Great Lakes stories, and they do it via Associated Press, but the Sacramento Bee is about 2,000 miles from the Great Lakes. So,
And so the awareness is really out there. Let me ask about action versus study. A lot of studies in science and things have been revealed here this week. Do you find, though, that now with some of the government agencies and especially with the environmental groups, it's now more focused on action and what can be done in terms of restoration projects instead of just sitting back and studying the problems?
I think this is really a time of action. I think we've seen, this past year especially, and I think, when we come back hopefully next year and the next year after that, we're going to be talking about all the great work that has been accomplished. Not that's in process, but what has been accomplished. But I also want to step back and defend again. I'm a scientist at heart. I am also do a lot of conservation planning. It has to be adaptive, and it's a cycle. It's not just a linear thing of I study and I plan and then I go do and then I go home. It all has to be adaptive, and if we miss, if we gap, if we stop some of that monitoring money for a year or 2 or 10 years, then 10 years down the future, we have a big hole and we don't know exactly what's going on. So all of these components of conservation, right? It's the continuum of conservation. It's the science, it's the planning, it's the action, it's the funding, it's the stakeholders in action. That all of that has to be in play at all the time.
Would you agree?
I'm going to take a slight exception to my esteemed colleague here. We have definitely made progress on the action front, but as I listen to the various seminars, I still hear a lot of talk about process. I was listening to a high-ranking official the other day, and if I could take collaboration out of her vocabulary, I would. There's nothing wrong with collaboration. I'm all for collaboration. Collaboration is a process, though. It's not the result.
Is it hard to put a price tag on certain things when we talk about restoration of the Great Lakes? It seems that it's hard for people to wrap their head around and say, okay, how much did you pay for this? How much did you pay for this? How much did you pay for this? And what are we getting back in terms for our money? Is it now going to be the next step to explain to people that it's not always easy to measure the return on what we're spending?
I think it is. I think it's a double-edged sword here of sometimes you have to put it in that language. A report was just released on aquatic invasive species control, and you put millions and millions of dollars out there on the plate and say, this is what it costs us. You have to do that to get it on people's radar screen. Those numbers aren't 100% correct, right? There's a little bit of error around them, but it puts it in order of magnitude to get the right attention, to put it in the right stream of thought. But you do get in trouble because that's not exact, and some of the benefits you're going to get are really hard to put a dollar value on, right? Your aesthetic beauty, your spiritual beauty, your cultural benefits, those things you really can't put a dollar on, but they do contribute to the health of place, the sense of place, drawing people to this region to live and work and recreate.
And I would say also timeline as well. It's hard to say that in a year, we got this area cleaned up and everything's going to be fine.
I would say the exact same thing. We have to have measures that say, some activity-based measures, right? So are you doing, did you spend the dollars, did you restore the acres? But then we have to think a couple years down the road, what benefits do we get out of it? Do we really do the restoration we hope to do? And you have to be able to report all along the stream, because sometimes the governmental reports do make what'd you do this year? And I have to be able to tell that, but then I have to step back and say, what's the real outcome I'm looking for 10, 20 years down the road?
And I think sometimes, Christy, you just have to do it because it's the right thing to do. Yes. I'll bet you 4 years ago when President Obama campaigned on the Great Lakes and putting $475 million into the budget for the first year, I don't think he probably did a real cost-benefit analysis. I think he's a smart guy, as many people are, and he just looked at the numbers and said, this is long overdue. We're going to do this. And now you got to make good on it. People are implementing. They have to show results, but sometimes you just have to do it because it's the right thing.
I think it's the exact same thing. Dave White, the Chief of Natural Resource Conservation Service of the USDA, said that yesterday. Said, we know what the right thing to do is. Let's just go do it. And that was powerful.
That's a great statement. So talk to me about now, what are the things that people are going to hear about in the next year? What are probably the top 3 tackling issues for Great Lakes?
I do see one as climate. It was obvious an issue here this past summer. The reason our algal blooms are one of the major contributing factors that our algal blooms were so low was because of the weather in the spring. And again, I'm not contributing that 100% to long-term climate change, but it is an idea of what's to come.
What about you, Gary? Something that
I don't have a top 3. I just think we're in a holding pattern here until after the election. Nobody's going to know where we are with funding or commitment. Obviously, the big wow was the Romney campaign with a no-show here as far as a representative to talk about their position. Things will keep moving forward, but I think in just small increments until January or February, when we know who's going to be leading the country, where the money's going to be. Those are big issues.
Last couple of seconds. Most pivotal time, one of the most pivotal times in history for the Great Lakes health?
I think so. I think we, again, have had our backs turned to the lakes. We thought of them as a dumping ground. Now I think we are full facing those lakes. We're investing money and resources, and everybody's coming to the table.
Okay, Patrick Doran, Gary Wilson, thanks so much for joining us for Great Lakes Week and Great Lakes Now. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.